How's it going, guys? Welcome back. We're almost done with The Four Loves by C.S. Lewis. And we're going to continue on and finish the chapter Friendship. The next chapter, which is the last chapter, is called Arrows. And I believe that we went through a really extensive ride. It was really fun, a lot of introspection and reflection. And after this, I will be doing a book review. And by the end of the year, maybe these, depending on how good these read-alongs did, I might take them off. I might leave them on my channel. But let me know if you guys like these read-alongs. We are going to be talking more about books. This year is learning a lot more about myself, being okay with it, growing, and I understand that YouTube is a skill. And hopefully throughout it, I'm going to be, I know things like this take patience, take time. So I'm going to, keep doing my best, trying to give it my all this year. But I apologize if this content isn't for you. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. The presence of such women, thousands strong, helps to account for the modern disparagement of friendship. They are often completely victorious. They banish male companionship, and therefore male friendship, from whole neighborhoods. In the only world they know, an endless prattling, jolly, replaces the intercourse of minds. All the men they meet talk like women, while women are present. This victory over friendship is often unconscious. There is, however, a more militant type of woman who plans it. I have heard one say, "Never let two men sit together, or they'll get talking about some subject, and then there'll be no fun." Her point could not have been more accurately made. Talk, by all means, the more of the better. Unceasingly cascades of the human voice, but not please a subject. The talk must not be about anything. This gay lady, this lively, accomplished, charming, and undurable bore, was seeking only each evening's amusement, making the meeting go. But the conscious war against friendship may be fought on a deeper level. There are women who regard it with hatred, envy, and fear as the enemy of eros, and perhaps even more, of affection. A woman of that sort has 100 arts to break up her husband's friendships. She will quarrel with his friends, herself, or better still, with their wives. She will sneer, obstruct, and lie. She does not realize that the husband whom she succeeds in isolating from his own kind will not be very well worth having. She has emasculated him. She will grow to be ashamed of him herself, nor does she remember how much of his life lies in places where she cannot watch him. New friendships will break out, but this time they will be secret. Lucky for her, and lucky beyond her deserts, if there are not soon other secrets as well. So I would like to take a moment right there, because that was it was very interesting. We just kind of like jumped back into it. And he was just dropping bombs, man. Like, I never really understood or never had a personal experience where the person behind it was deliberately trying to isolate myself with and trying to break relationships like that. I just think that it's a really crazy thing that he just like was just jumping. Like, I mean, I just can't believe that this is under that was under friendship. I mean, there are some women who get jealous, I suppose, but I think that's a little too much if you're doing all that. You know what I'm saying? Like, and you're right. That just leads to more distrust along the way. You know, like he said, new friendships will break out, but this time they will be secret. I mean, it's just good to be out in the open. All these, of course, are silly women, The sensible woman who, if they wanted, would certainly be able to qualify themselves for the world of discussion and ideas. All these, of course, are silly women. The sensible women who, if they wanted, would certainly be able to qualify themselves for the world of discussion and ideas are precisely those who, if they are not qualified, never try to enter it or destroy it. They have other fish to fry. At a mixed party, they gravitate to one end of the room and talk women's talk to one another. They don't want us for this sort of purpose any more than we want them. It is only the riffraff of each sex that wants to be incessantly hanging on the other. Live and let live. They laugh at us a good deal. That is just as it should be. Where the sexes having no real shared activities can only meet in affection and eros, and they cannot be friends. It is a healthy that each should have a lively sense of each other's absurdity. Indeed, it is always healthy. No one ever really appreciated the other sex, just as no one really appreciates children or animals, without at times feeling them to be funny, for both sexes are. Humanity is a tragic comical, but the division into sexes enables each to see the other the joke that often escapes it in itself, and the pathos too. I gave warning that this chapter would be largely a rehabilitation. The preceding pages have, I hope, made it clear why, to me at least, it seems no wonder if our ancestors regarded friendship as something that raised us almost above humanity. This love, free from instinct, free from all duties but those which love has freely assumed, almost wholly free from jealousy, and free without qualification from the need to be needed, is eminently spiritual. It is the sort of love one can imagine between angels. Have we found a natural love which is love itself? Before we rush into any such conclusion, let us beware of the ambiguity in the word spiritual. There are many New Testament contexts in which it means pertaining to the Holy Spirit. And in such contexts, the spiritual is by definition good. But when spiritual is used simply as the opposite of a corporeal or instinctive or animal, this is not so. There is spiritual evil as well as spiritual good. There are unholy as well as holy angels. The worst sins of men are spiritual. We must not think that in finding friendship to be spiritual, we have found it to be in itself wholly inerrant. Three significant facts remain to be taken into account. The first, already mentioned, is the distrust which authorities tend to have of close friendships among their subjects. It may be unjustified, or there may be some basis for it. Secondly, there is an attitude of the majority towards all circles of close friends. Every name they give such a circle is more or less derogatory. It is best set lucky, if not a coterie, a gang, or a little senate, or an admiration society. Those who in their own lives only know affection, companionship, and eros suspect friends to be stuck-up prigs who think themselves too good of us. Of course, this is a voice of envy, but envy always brings out the truest charge and the charge nearest to the truth that she can think up. It hurts more. This charge, therefore, will have to be considered. Wow. I mean, I always knew he kind of dropped a lot of heavy hints. I always knew that his perspective, and it makes it more and more obvious as you can kind of keep reading the book, and it makes sense because it was one of the first things that he mentioned. And but he is a devout Christian, he is into his religion, and he resonates God with his speech. And he even compares friendships as a love of angels. And I think that's a beautiful analogy, because angels don't get that much love, man. Like, I just don't feel like there's not very many stories or analogies that highlight the angel aspect of it. So I think that is awesome. And that was the end of my tangent. Finally, we must notice that friendship is a very rarely the image under which Scripture represents the love between God and man. It is not entirely neglected, but far more often seeking a symbol for the highest love of all. Scripture ignores this seemingly almost angelic relation and plunges into the depth of what is most natural and instinctive. Affection is taken as the image of God, is represented to us as Father. Eros, when Christ is represented as the bridge room of the church. Let us begin with the suspicious of those in authority. I think there is a ground for them, and that a consideration of this ground brings something important to light. Friendship, I have said, is born at the moment when no man says to another, "What? You too? I thought that one by myself." Friendship, I have said, is born at the moment when one man says to another, "What? You too? I thought that no one but myself." But the common taste or vision or point of view which is thus discovered not always be a nice one. From such a moment art or philosophy or an advance in religion or morals might well take their rise. But why not also torture, cannibalism, or human sacrifice? Surely most of us have experienced the ambivalent nature of such moments in your own youth. It was wonderful when we first met someone who cared for our favorite poet. What we had hardly understood before now took clear shape. What we had been half ashamed of we now freely acknowledge. But it was no less delightful when we first met someone who shared with us a secret evil. This too became far more palpable and explicit. Of this too we ceased to be ashamed. Even now, at whatever age, we all know the perilous charm of shared hatred or grievance. It is difficult not to hail as a friend the only other man in college who really sees the faults of the sub-warden. Alone among the unsympathetic companions, I hold certain views and standards timidly, half ashamed to avow them, and half doubtful if they can after all be right. Put me back among my friends, and in a half an hour, in 10 minutes, these same views, standards become once more undisputable. The opinion of this little circle, while I am in it, outweighs that of 1,000 outsiders. As friendship strengthens, it will do this even when my friends are far away. For we all wish to be judged by our peers, by the men after our own heart. Only they really know our mind, and only they can judge it by standards we fully acknowledge. Theirs is the praise we really covet and the blame we really dread. The little pockets of early Christians survived because they cared exclusively for the love of the brethren, and stopped their ears to the opinion of the pagan society all around them. But a circle of criminals, cranks, or perverts survives in just the same way, by becoming deaf to the opinion of the outside world, by discounting it as the chatter of outsiders who don't understand of the conventional and the gregarious, the establishment of prigs, prudes, and humbugs. It is therefore easy to see why the authority frowns on friendship. Every real friendship is a sort of secession, even a rebellion. It may be a rebellion of serious thinkers against accepted claptrap, or faddist against accepted good sense, of real artists against popular ugliness, or of charlatans against civilized taste, of good men against the badness of society, or of bad men against its goodness. Whichever it is, it will be unwelcomed to the top people. In each knot of friends there is a sectional public opinion, which fortifies its members against the public opinion of the community in general. Each therefore is a pocket of potential resistance. Men who have real friends are less easy to manage or get at, harder for good authorities to correct, for bad authorities to corrupt. Hence, if our masters by force or by propaganda about togetherness or by unobtrusively making privacy and unplanned leisure impossible, ever succeed in producing a world where all are companions and none are friends, they will have removed certain dangers and will also have taken us from what is almost strongest safeguard against complete servitude. But the dangers are perfectly real. Friendships, as the ancients saw, can be a school of virtue, but also, as they did not see, a school of vice. It is ambivalent. It makes good men better and bad men worse. It would be a waste of time to elaborate the point. What concerns us is not to expatiate on the badness of bad friendships, but to become aware of the possible dangers in good ones. This love, like all the other natural loves, has a congenital liability to a particular disease. It will be obvious that the element of succession of indifference or deafness, at least on some manners, to the voices of the outer world is common to all friendships, whether good, bad, or merely innocuous. Even if the common ground of friendships is nothing more momentous than stamp collecting. The circle rightly and inevitably ignores the views of the millions who think it is a silly occupation and of the thousands who have merely dabbled in it. The founders of meteorology rightly and inevitably ignored the views of millions who still attributed storms to witchcraft. There is no offense in this, as I know that I should be an outsider to a circle of golfers, mathematicians, or motorists. So I claim the equal right of regarding them as outsiders to mine. People who bore one another should meet seldom. People who interest one another should see each other often. The danger is that this partial indifference or deafness to the outside opinion, justified and necessarily though it is, may lead to a wholesale indifference or deafness. The most spectacular instances of this can be seen not in a circle of friends, but in the theocratic or aristocratic class. We know friends, but in the theocratic or aristocratic class, we know what the priests in our Lord's time thought of the common people. The knights in the Froissart's Chronicles had neither sympathy nor mercy for the outsiders, the churls or peasantry, but this deplorable indifference was very close intertwined with a good quality. They really had among themselves a very high standard of valor, generosity, courtesy, and honor. This standard the cautious, close-fisted churl would have thought merely silly. The knights in I just got so confused reading this passage. So we're just gonna go a little bit back. I was just so confused. So the knights in the Froissart's Chronicles had neither sympathy nor mercy for the outsiders, the churls or peasantry, but this deplorable indifference was very closely intertwined with a good quality. They really had among themselves a very high standard of valor, generosity, courtesy, and honor. This standard the cautious, close-fisted churl would have thought merely silly. The knights, in maintaining it, were, and had to be, wholly indifferent to his views. They didn't give a damn what he thought. If they had our standard today, would not be the poorer and the coarser for it, but the habit of not giving a damn grows on a class. To discount the voice of the peasant where it really ought to be discounted makes it easier to discount his voice when he cries for justice or mercy. The partial deafness, which is noble and necessary, encouraged the wholesale deafness, which is arrogant and inhuman. A circle of friends cannot, of course, oppress the outer world as a powerful social class can, but it is subject on its own scale to the same danger. It can come to treat us as outsiders in general, in derogatory sense, those who were quite properly outsiders for a particular reason. Thus, like an aristocracy, it can create around it a vacuum across which no voice will carry. The literary and the artistic circle which begin by discounting, perhaps rightly, the plain man's idea about literature or art may come to discount equally his idea that they should pay their bills, cut their nails, and behave civilly. Whatever faults the circle has, and no circle is without them, thus become incurable. But that is not all. The partial and defensible deafness was based on some kind of superiority. Even if it were only a superior knowledge about stamps, the sense of superiority will then get itself attached to total deafness. The group will disdain as well as ignore those outside of it. It will, in effect, have turned itself into something very like a class. A coterie is a self-appointed aristocracy. I said above that in a good friendship, each member often feels humility towards the rest. He sees that they are splendid and counts himself lucky to be among them. But unfortunately, the they and them are also, from another point of view, we and us. Thus, the transition from individual humility to corporate pride is very easy. I am not thinking of what we should call a social or snobbish pride. A delight in being known to know distinguished people. That is quite a different thing. The snob wishes to attach himself to people because it is already regarded as an elite. Friends are in danger of coming to regard themselves as an elite because they are already attached. We seek men after our own heart for their own sake and are then alarmingly or delightfully surprised by the feeling that we have become an aristocracy. Not that we'd call it that. Every reader who has known friendship will probably feel inclined to deny with some heat that his own circle was ever guilty of such absurdity. I feel the same, but in such matters it is best not to begin with ourselves. However, it may be with us. I think we have all recognized some such tendency in those other circles to which we are the outsiders. I was once at some kind of conference where two clergymen, obviously close friends, began talking about unrecreated energies other than God. I asked how there could be any unrecreated things except God if the creed was right in calling him the maker of all things visible and invincible. The reply was to glance at one another and laugh. I had no objection to their laughter, but I wanted an answer in words as well. It was not at all a sneering or unpleasant laugh. It was expressed very much what Americans would express by saying, "Isn't he cute?" It was like the laughter of jolly grown-ups when an infant terrible asks the sort of question that is never asked. You can hardly imagine how inoffensively it was done, nor how clearly it was conveyed, the impression that they were fully aware of living habitually on a higher plane than the rest of us, that they came among us as knights among churls, as grown-ups among children. Very possibly that they had the answer to my question and knew that I was too ignorant to follow it. If they said that I had in so many words, I am afraid it would be too long to explain. I would not be attributing to them the pride of friendship. The glance and the laugh are the real point, the audible, visible embodiment of a corporate superiority taken for granted and unconcealed, the almost complete inoffensiveness, the absence of any apparent wish to wound or exult. They were very nice young men, really underlined the Olympian attitude. Here was a sense of superiority, so secure that it could afford to be tolerant, urbane, and unapathetic. This sense of corporate superiority is not always Olympian, that is, tranquil and tolerant. It may be titanic, restive, militant, and embittered. Another time, when I had been addressing an undergraduate society, some discussion, very properly, followed my paper. A young man with an expression as tense as a rodent so dealt with me, and I had to say, "Look, sir, twice in the last 5 minutes, you have as good as called me a liar. If you cannot discuss a question of criticism without that kind of thing, I must leave. I expected he would do one of two things: lose his temper and redouble his insults, or blush and apologize. The startling thing is that he did neither. No, new repetition was added to the habitual malaise of his expression. He did not repeat the lie direct, but apart from that, he went on just as before. One had come up against an iron curtain. He was forearmed against the risk of any strictly personal retaliation, either friendly or hostile with such as me. Behind this, almost certainly there lies a circle of Titanic of sorts, self-dubbed Knights Templars perpetually in arms to defend a critical buffet. We, who are they to them, do not exist as persons at all. We are specimens of very age groups, types, climates of opinion or interests to be exterminated. Deprived of one weapon, they coolly take up another. They are not, in the ordinary human sense, meeting us at all. They are merely doing a job of work. Spraying. I have heard one use that image. Insecticide. Dude, like, what the fuck is he talking about, man? Like, I just, like, dude, like, he gets into these rhythms, and I just don't know what the fuck, like, you know, Jesus Christ, dude. Like, was he really living at the time where, like, there was guilds and, like, knights and shit, dude? Like, I just don't understand. And, like, it's just, I mean, what the fuck did I just read? Fuck. I'm just so pissed. It's just ridiculous. Like, for real, though, like, this chapter could have been way, like, I could have been done by now. But, like, this dude, he's just going on, man. My two nice young clergymen and my not-so-nice rodent were on a high intellectual level. So were that famous set who, in Edwardian times, reached the sublime fatuity in calling themselves the souls. But the same feeling of corporate superiority can possess a group of much more commonplace friends. It will then be flaunted in a cruder way. We have all seen this done by the old hands at school, talking in the presence of a new boy, or two regulars in the army talking before a temporary, sometimes by a very loud and vulgar friends to impress mere strangers in a bar or a railway carriage. Such people talk very intimately and esoterically in order to be overheard. Everyone who is not in that circle must be shown that he is not in it. Indeed, the friendship may be about almost nothing except the fact that it excludes. In speaking to an outsider, each member of it delights to mention the others by their Christian names or nicknames, but because the outsider won't know who he means. A man I once knew was even subtler. He simply referred to his friends as we all knew, certainly ought to know, who they were. As Richard Button once said to me, he would begin, "We were all very young. We never dared to admit that we hadn't heard of Richard Button. It seemed so obvious that everyone who was anyone, he must be a household word. Not to know him argued ourselves unknown. Only much later did we come to realize that no one else had heard of him either. I now have a suspicion that some of these Richard Buttons and Hezekiah Cromwells and Eleanor Four-Fifths had no more existence than Mrs. Harris. But for a year or so, we were completely overawed." Like, I'm not trying to be rude, and like, honestly, and I understand his words and I understand his message. It's just like, it just takes so long, man. And I know it's a book, so it's like, I don't know why I'm bitching, but it's like, Jesus, like, I don't know, man. I shouldn't use his name in vain, but wow. Okay. Let's finish this. We can thus detect the pride of friendship, whether Olympian, Titanic, or merely vulgar, in many circles of friends. It would be rash to assume that our own is safe from its danger, for of course it is our own way that we should be slowest to recognize it. The danger of such pride is indeed almost inseparable from friendly love. Friendship must exclude. From the innocent and necessary act of excluding to the spirit of exclusiveness is an easy step, and thence to the degrading pleasure of exclusiveness. If that is once admitted, the downward slope will grow rapidly steeper. We may never perhaps become Titans or plainclads. We might, which is in some ways worse, become souls. The common vision which first brought us together may fade quite away. We shall be a coterie that exists for the sake of being a coterie, a little self-elected and therefore absurd aristocracy, basking in the moonshine of our own collective self-approval. Sometimes a circle in this condition begins to dabble in the world of practice, judiciously enlarging itself to admit recruits whose share in original common interest is negligible, but who are felt to be, in some undefined sense, sound men. It becomes a power in the land. Membership of it comes to a political importance, though the politics involved may be only those of the regiment, a college, or cathedral close. The manipulation of these committees and the capture of jobs for sound men and the united front against the have-nots now have become its principal occupation, and those who once met to talk about God or poetry now meet to talk about lectureships or livings. Notice that the justice of their doom. Dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return, said God to Adam. In a circle which has thus dwindled into a coven of wranglers, friendship has sunk back again into the mere practical companionship which was its matrix. They are now the same sort of body as the primitive horde of hunters. Hunters, indeed, is precisely what they are, not the kind of hunters I most respect. The mass of people who are never quite right are never quite wrong. They are hopelessly mistaken in their belief that every knot of friends come into existence for the sake of pleasures of conceit and superiority. They are, I trust, mistaken in their belief that every friendship actually indulges in these pleasures, but they would seem to be right in diagnosing pride as the danger to which friendships are naturally liable. Just because this is most spiritual of loves, the danger which besets it is spiritual too. Friendship is even, if you like, angelic, but man needs to be triply protected by humility if he is to eat the bread of angels without risk. Perhaps we may now hazard a guess why Scripture uses friendships so rarely as an image of the highest love. It is already, in actual fact, too spiritual to be a symbol of spiritual things. The highest does not stand out with the lowest. God can safely represent himself to us as father and husband because only a lunatic would think that he is physically our sire, or that his marriage with the church is other than mythical. But if friendship were used for this purpose, we might mistake the symbol for the thing symbolized. The danger inherent in it would be aggravated. We might be further encouraged to mistake that nearness by resemblance to the heavenly life which friendship certainly displays for a nearness of approach. Friendship, then, like the other natural loves, is unable to save itself. In reality, because it is spiritual and therefore faces a subtler enemy, it must, even more wholeheartedly than they, invoke the divine protection if it hopes to remain sweet. For consider how narrow its true path is. It must not become what the people call a mutual admiration society, yet if it's not a full of mutual admiration, of appreciation love, it is not friendship at all. For unless our lives are to be miserably impoverished, it must be for us in our friendships as it was for Christiana and her party in the Pilgrim's Progress. They seemed to be a terror one to the other, for that they could not see that glory each one herself which they could see in each other. Now therefore they began to esteem each other better than themselves. For you are fairer than I am, said one, and you are more comely than I am, said another. There is the long run only one way in which we can taste this illustrious experience with safety, and Bunyan has indicated in the same passage. It was in the house of the interpreter, after they had been bathed, sealed, and freshly clothed in a white raiment, that the women saw one another in this light. If we remember the bathing, sealing, and robing, we shall be safe. And the higher the common ground of friendship is, the more necessary the remembrance. In an explicitly religious friendship, above all, to forget it would be fatal. For then it will seem to us that we 4 or 5 have chosen one another, the inside of each finding the intrinsic beauty of the rest, like to like, a voluntary nobility, that we have ascended above the rest of mankind by our native powers. The other loves do not invite the same illusions. Affection obviously requires kinship, or at least the proximities which never depend on our own choice. And as for Eros, half the love songs and half the love poems in the world will tell you that the beloved is your fate or destiny, no more your choice than a thunderbolt, for it is not in our power to love or hate. Cupid's archery genes anything but ourselves. But in friendship, being free of all that, we think that we have chosen our peers. In reality, a few years difference in the dates of our births, a few more miles between certain houses, the choice of one university instead of the other, posting to different regiments, the accident of a topic being raised or not being raised at the first meeting, any of these chances might have kept us apart, but for a Christian, they are, strictly speaking, no chances. A secret master of ceremonies has been at work. Jesus Christ, who said to the disciples, "Ye have not chosen me, but I have chosen you," can truly say to every group of Christian friends, "You have not chosen one another, but I have chosen you for one another." The friendship is not a reward for discrimination and good taste in finding one another out. It is an instrument by which God reveals to each of the beauties of all others. They are no greater than the beauties of 1,000 other men. By friendship, God opens your eyes to them. They are like all beauties derived from Him, and then, in a good friendship, increased by Him through the friendship itself, so that His instrument of creating as well for revealing, at least this feast is. It is He who has spread the board, and it is He who has chosen the guests. It is He we may dare to hope, who sometimes does, and always should, preside. Let us not reckon without our host. Not that we may always partake in solemnly. God, who has made good laughter forbid. It is one of the most difficult and delightful subtleties of life that we must deeply acknowledge certain things to be serious and yet retain the power, and will treat to them often as lightly as game. But there will be a time for saying more about this in the next chapter. For the next moment, I will only quote Dunbar's beautifully balanced advice. Man, please thy Maker, and be merry, and give not for this world a cherry. Wow, dude. Wow, C.S. Lewis. Oh my God. Wow, C.S. Lewis. That's such a creative way to end the chapter. Oh my goodness. Oh, wow. What the fuck was that, dude? Like, dude, I mean, he doubles on God, bro. God is, so you basically don't have any free will, bro. Love is just, you gotta love your destiny and your fate, and, God just fucking, God, I'm sorry, man. I'm not even trying to fucking diss God like that, but it's just like, come on, man, come on. It's just, he just takes his time, man. He takes his time, and it's crazy. It's just so bizarre that he takes so long to explain something, man. Like, and it's just not my cup of tea. Like, I can see, like, I mean, I've never read Narnia. That should tell you something. I've watched the movie. I just, like, man, I respect this guy's word and his perspective on things. It's just not for me, though. It's just not for me. But with terms of friendships, I mean, shit, dude. He just put so much in that. And I think he could have, like, if he really wanted his point to be across, like, I don't know. I think he should have been more specific. He should have broken it down a little bit more. There are obviously some side tangents that he puts in there, which I just don't get, but like it adds to the picture. So anyway, I can't wait for the book review. That's all for me today, and I hope you guys have a great night. See ya.